When your Google Ads Performance Max campaigns are not getting the return on ad spend that you need, consider switching to standard shopping campaigns instead. Although you can't directly add keywords to standard shopping campaigns, you can actually control which searches your shopping ads will show on to a much greater degree than you can with Performance Max campaigns. I find this is the best way to improve my return on ad spend in Google Ads accounts when I can't make Performance Max get any higher returns, so I'll show you how now. So to control which searches your shopping ads show on, many Google Ads experts use a method called query level bidding. Some call it query sculpting or tiered shopping campaigns, but the idea is the same. You take your best performing keywords and add them as negative keywords into one shopping campaign, and then don't add them as negatives into another shopping campaign. And so that second shopping campaign with no negatives is then the only one that can bid on those good keywords, and then you bid much higher in that campaign. So Martin Roterding is the person who popularized this back in 2014. You can check out his original presentation on this on his website. It's a great presentation and gives a lot more detail on the value of different clicks, and then he presents even a bit of a case study on his results. So his website's PPC Epiphany. Again, this is from back all the way in 2014. It's still relevant today. You can check out a second video where Martin and another expert talk about this on this YouTube video. So I'll link to both of these in the description below. So what we'll do to start is we'll take an example, and I want to use Nike's Vaporfly shoes as an example. One, because Nike's a brand that's well known by a lot of people, and Nike also always uses distinct model names for their products. So this is the Nike Vaporfly 3 running shoe. So the brand is Nike, the model is Vaporfly. What I'm going to do in here, I have two campaigns set up already that I've made, two shopping campaigns. One of them I've named Nike Generic, and the other one I've named Nike Models. Generic is for generic searches, so a generic search means something like running shoes, and then model being something like a model name search. So Nike Vaporfly running shoes, that's a search for that specific model of shoe. Now I don't work with Nike, but I'm just going to pretend that I'm setting up a campaign to sell these products in a Google Shopping Ads campaign. Because standard shopping campaigns don't let you add keywords, all you get to add are your ad groups here. But what we're going to do here is we're going to add to this generic campaign all of the best keywords that I can think of as negative keywords. So I'll go to search keywords negative, and then typically I do this with a negative keyword list. Oh, and we have to make a new one, add. So the campaign, save to new list. And I try to make the negative keyword list name as easy to understand as possible. So this one I'm going to call it model name searches. Or to make it shorter, we'll just call it model names. And then I'll put in parentheses add to generic and brand campaigns. And now I'm going to put in my keywords, so Vaporfly. So this is where I'll keep all the model names. Let's also put Vaporfly 2 words. And then if I were advertising for Nike, I would obviously be doing all sorts of shoe model names. I won't show you in this video how to do this. I'll show you in a different video, but what you can do to get all the model names quickly is to take the product data feed and just extract all the model names from it. So I could take Air Max 270, Mid SC, Jordan 1 actually, Max 2013, Vomero. All these model names I could take easily out of the Merchant Center product data. So I won't show you how to do that here, but that's the best way to do it. And then with that, you can just paste in a list of all your model names. For now, I'm just gonna hit save. So there's my model names, and then this is the generic campaign. So I also don't want to advertise on Nike searches in this campaign. So I'm going to add second campaign or second negative keyword list, and I'll call it brand names add to generic campaigns Nike. And you can do some misspellings if you want, just to be sure. All right. So I'm going to hit save. So now I've got my two negative keyword lists. I've got the model names, Vaporfly, and then Vapor space Fly, and then I've got brand names, Nike. All right, so now I'll go back to my campaigns. All right, so what'll happen here is now I've got two campaigns. This one, generic, has blocked those good keywords, Vaporfly and Nike. And now the only other shopping campaign I have is this Nike models campaign. And so what's going to happen is Google will look at this campaign. In fact, I have a chart here to make it easier to look at. So here's my generic campaign, and here's the negative keywords. What Google's going to do, it's going to look at this campaign when someone searches for Nike Vaporfly shoes. Google will look at this campaign, and then Google will say, okay, Nike and Vaporfly are negatives. And so we can't send a bid to auction from this campaign for this particular search because of those negatives. So then Google will pass over this campaign and then move on to this one. And this one has no negative keywords. And so Google will then be able to send a bid to auction for these searches, Nike Vaporfly, Vaporfly shoes. And in this campaign, the models campaign, my bid is much higher. It's $2 instead of 25 cents in this generic campaign. Furthermore, I have the campaign priority setting set to high for the generic campaign and then to low for the models campaign. Let me show you what that is briefly. So shopping Nike generic, I'm going to click on settings. There's a setting here called campaign priority. And now this is the generic campaign with low bids. This is the campaign that we're adding our good keywords as negatives to. And I want the campaign priority to be high on this one. And I want it to be low, so low priority on this one, which is the model search. And that's a little confusing because the campaign that has a high setting has low bids, but the campaign that has high bids has low priority setting. And the reason for that is this. What we're telling Google here is consider this campaign first for any auction because it's set to a high priority, and then consider this campaign second for any auction because it's set to low priority. What would happen if I switched these, let's say somebody searches for a generic search like running shoes, that's not added as a negative keyword here. Our models campaign doesn't have that as a negative. And so what would happen is Google would say, okay, the search for running shoes came in. I'm going to look at this campaign. This campaign is eligible to show an ad on running shoes because it's not a negative. And then we would bid that high bid on running shoes. And we don't want that. We want to bid low on running shoes. And therefore we tell Google this campaign gets the first chance to bid, but we're only going to give it a low bid. And then for searches that don't get caught by this campaign, so searches that filter next to this campaign, they get that high bid. So that's why we set the campaign priority setting to high on the campaign with low bids, and then the campaign priority setting to low on the campaign with high bids. So it's a little backwards, but just make sure to remember that so you don't set this up wrong. All right, and then just as a quick note, included products, we'll put all the Nike products in here. I'll show you later how to do this for multiple brands and having multiple brands set up within different sets of campaigns. And then last, the shared budget is the budget you have to use for these. So you can see these two campaigns. Let's go back. I've given them a shared budget called Shopping Nike. Probably wouldn't start with such a low budget, but I'm not going to do that, so I'll leave it. So these two campaigns share a budget. And the reason for that is if this campaign, the generic campaign, were to run out of budget before the end of the day, let's say this one runs out of budget before the end of the day, then what happens is all these generic searches that ideally should be in this campaign with a low bid, those then get pushed up to this campaign. So just pretend this campaign is now out of the auction. There's no way for that to bid because it ran out of budget. This campaign still has budget, and so now this campaign starts getting the searches for things like running shoes and sneakers and generic stuff that we don't want to spend $2 a click on. And so that's why you have to use a shared budget. Otherwise, the structure breaks down and it won't work. All right, so before I run these campaigns, I always go through and make just a check of all the settings. So this is the generic campaign, I always go from the low bid to the high, work my way up to the high bid campaigns as I check. So I've got to check for the feed CPC is the bidding. ROAS we won't use. Budget is shared, that's correct. Campaign priority is high, that's correct. Search partners I often turn off to start with. And then country, you always select in or regularly in your location so that Google won't show ads to people outside of your target location. And then I'll do the same for the models campaign. Shared budget, campaign priority low, turn that off. Not always, but usually I turn that off, and then check this again. All right, so now these are good to go. And what I'll do next is show you what I would look for when checking the search terms for these campaigns. I don't have a live campaign that I can share because I can't share the client data on clients that I work with. So what I'll do instead is I'll just pretend. So normally I would go to my shopping campaign on like a Monday, check out the generic search terms report. So in here in the search terms report under insight and reports, and then I would see a bunch of search terms here, their clicks, their costs, etc. And since this is just an example, I don't have any search terms, so I'm going to pretend that this is my generic campaign search terms report. I'm just going to pretend that I've got these to review. So Nike shoes, I'm going to look at that and think, well, that's not a generic search. I want to add that as a negative. Vaporfly, that's a model name search. It's just in 2 words instead of 1. So I'm going to add that as a negative phrase match. Men's shoes, that's generic. Happy to bid on that with low bids. I'm pretending that I got 20 cents per click on that. I should change this actually to CPC. That makes more sense. And then running shoes, generic. Happy to bid 15 cents on that. Shoes, happy to bid 5 cents on that. Leave those. Slippers, that's irrelevant. So I'm going to add that as a negative. And then jackets, I'm going to add that as a negative. I'm not going to add Nike jackets as a negative, not as a phrase match and not as a exact match, because if I just add jackets on its own as a negative, that would block searches for jackets and searches for Nike jackets. Now, there's another search here, lightest weight Nike running shoes. That has the word Nike in it. I don't have to add that negative again, but let's just take a look at that product. This is the Nike Vaporfly. This shoe is popular for being lightweight. That's its claim to fame. It's one of the latest running shoes on the market. And so that's actually not a bad search. Lightest weight Nike running shoe. Even though it's not a search for the Vaporfly, it might make sense for me to actually add that as a negative and see how it goes. So I could do lightest weight, lightweight, or I could keep this even simpler and just go light and then weight. I could add that as a broad match negative and then add that as a broad match negative. So I could do that too, lightest weight, but I'll just put this for now. And so these I'm adding as negatives to this generic campaign because I want them to show up here in the Nike models campaign. The location that I put these negatives in kind of depends on the situation. So slippers and Nike jackets, those are not going to be relevant anywhere in the account. So I would add these as a negative keyword at the account level. So what I'll do, normally I would add them from the search terms report, but for demonstration, I'll just go to search keywords, negative, list, account, add those there, save. And now I'll take this list and I'll add it to both of my shopping campaigns, even to my search campaigns if I wanted to. All right, so now jackets and slippers won't show on any of my ads at all. Now Nike's a branded search, so I want that to be added as a negative to the generic campaign. But to make it simpler, every time I find a brand name, I'm just going to add it to my brand negative key list because it's easier for me to think brand negatives go in the brand list. I've already added that one. I've got Vaporfly that I will add to the model names list. Again, it's just easier for me to remember to add negatives to the negative keyword list that matches the type of negative I'm adding. So that's added. And then something like lightest weight, I actually would take that and add it to this model name campaign. Although you could do this in all sorts of different ways. You could add this to the campaign itself, to that generic campaign at the campaign level or at the ad group level if you had a reason to do that. I'll just add it here for now. And so that's how I would add those negative keywords as I'm going through the search terms report. Then the last thing I would do every week is check the searches of the product campaign. So let's do that real quick. Or I shouldn't say product, I should say the Nike models campaign. So I would go here, search terms, and then I have none here because it's a demo, but it wouldn't be unreasonable for me to see things like Nike Vaporfly, Vaporfly shoes, Vaporfly StockX, lightest weight running shoes. This one's interesting. This is for Vaporfly, which is exactly what we're selling, but it has another keyword or word in it that we don't want. This is StockX is a shoe company or shoe website. So this isn't our website in my hypothetical example here. So I don't want to show ads on this one. And so that's why it's nice for me to have this account level negative keyword list, because what I can do is just list, add that across the entire account. And now as I'm going through my negative keyword lists, this list is already applied to my campaign, so I don't have to think about applying it to campaigns again. So that's how you set up query level bidding in your standard Google Shopping ads with a set of 2 campaigns. You can also do this with 3 campaigns, which I'll explain in my next video. Find a link to that in the description below. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with your colleagues. All that helps grow the channel so that I can keep making more videos like this. Thanks, and happy advertising.